Hi, good evening. Welcome to Connect Daily Bread, where we recognize man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Today's reading is in Galatians chapter 3. So go ahead and check that out, and I'll share some thoughts. So here in Galatians 3, we see Paul use some pretty forceful language and even ask if the church at Galatia asked them, have you been bewitched? Have you been tricked, duped? Has some spell been cast on you? What's going on? In highlights that they've moved away from the gospel, that they're moving towards a kind of works-based faith, right? Moving back towards the Old Testament law and trying to keep that. And Paul lays out, man, you guys experienced the gospel. You saw and witnessed things take place, the signs and wonders that accompanied Paul and the other apostles as they gave the testimony about Jesus, confirming that. And then they respond and receive forgiveness and the gift of the Spirit, and things are radically different, and they're transformed, and they saw that. And he says, having begun in the Spirit, are you now trying to perfect yourself in the flesh? Which that for us can be something to take away and make sure that in our walk that begins with a total and absolute surrender to Jesus, our participation in his death, burial, and resurrection, that we maintain that. We continue to live the baptized life and live in a deep, appreciative dependence on Jesus, and hold on to that surrender, trusting God's Spirit to move and work and empower us to do what God calls us to do, but to not get mistaken that any of that was brought about by us, or that we can accomplish the things that truly matter in the kingdom without Jesus, because that's just not the case. And so Paul does what he did in the book of Romans, which will come later than Galatia. There's some similar themes in Galatians and Romans. And so what Paul does here in the chapter is he points to Abraham, the father of faith. And he's saying, why was Abraham so respected by God and used in such amazing ways? And it was because his righteousness came about by faith. He believed God and he did what God had asked of him. And then he moves into this idea of the promise that was given to Abraham, that through his seed all nations would be blessed. And now he gets very specific on that word used for seed and that promise originally given by God to Abraham. And Paul highlights that was not the plural. It was not by your seeds, by many of your children and descendants will all the nations be blessed, but rather by your seed, a singular seed. And here Paul tells us that seed referred to Christ. And Christ brought about the blessing to all nations, that by saving us from the curse that accompanied sin under the law, by becoming a curse, dying on a pole himself, he gave us redemption. He traded place with us so that we could trade place with him as far as relationship to the Father goes. And that we could really, what righteousness in Christ is about, is not about our track record, which is, when I think of mine, it's abysmal, but it's about Jesus' track record and God, and trusting that God looks at Jesus for my righteousness, for you and I's righteousness. And so it's really important for us to have a gratitude for the sacrifice that Jesus made. And I know we talk about these things literally daily, and we see them all the time and hear them all the time, and which is awesome because we need to be reminded. Scriptures tell us of the need for remembrance. That's what the Lord's Supper is all about. But one of the dangers in growing up and hearing something over and over is the tendency to kind of take that for granted. So my encouragement today is to have a renewed gratitude for Jesus's love for us, a renewed recognition for the new creation that was brought about by Christ, that we, y'all, all of us children of God are the temple of the living God, and to allow some gratitude and love and appreciation to well up within us, because that's really going to be the fuel that keeps us going, because this life ain't easy by any means. It's so worth it, It is true. It is awesome. And it's going to just get better and better. But it is tough. And so the love of Christ is really what can and will fuel us. So that would be my encouragement to all of us today. But those are my thoughts. Love y'all. Have a good one.